Everyone else. In this video, we shall be talking about George Eliot's novel, Mill on the Floss, and especially we shall focus on the book 2 of Mill on the Floss. As you know, book 2 is all about school time, in which we are expecting Tom to be studying in certain institution, and this is the institution of Mr. Stelling, which is not a regular school. It's a type of academy in which Mr. Tom is supposed to get his lessons from Mr. Stelling. Now, in the beginning of this book 2, the writer goes to explain the differences between the two schools, one that Tom had already attended with Mr. Jacob, and the other one which Tom is going to attend with Mr. Stelling. According to the writer, Mr. Jacob's school didn't have all those good qualities which the school should have. For example, it less focused on the education of Tom, it rather focused more on the playfulness, the games, and the spending of time in good youthful company as Tom would do there. The writer says that the teacher, Mr. Jacob, he was also not that interested in learning and in teaching, but however he wanted to train the boys through these games, the boyhood games or the other games which they can possibly enjoy. And so was the result, that Tom learned all as the boys should learn because of their company, youthful company, but he didn't learn anything which may be called academic. Besides that, something very humorous has also been pointed out about the person, Mr. Jacob, that he was named as Old Goggles because he all the time wore some type of glasses on his eyes, and so every student addressed him with the same name, Old Goggles. And not only this, the writer has taken much time in praising Mr. Stelling. Mr. Stelling has been told to be a highly qualified person and having a lot of knowledge and information in his brain. Not only this knowledge and information was there, Mr. Stelling was also capable of delivering this information to his audience. And as a result, he proved always very successful type of speaker whenever he talked to the people in church. Whenever he delivered a speech in church, he was understood very well and he was appreciated very well for the quality of his sound and the quality of his lectures. So as a result, he was far ahead of Mr. Jacob, where now Mr. Tulliver will be getting education. Mr. Stelling not only has good voice, good expressive type of personality, but he also had a lot of knowledge and he knew a lot of techniques as well. Physically also he was very charming, he was very attractive, and morally also he was the type of person who never hesitated in expressing that he was really a moralist person, and he wanted to show that he's a responsible person as well. For example, he was the one who loved his wife very much, and his wife loved him too much, and as a result both were the ideal couple and they had no conflicts within them and they were running their life in a perfect possible way. So this is the start of the second book of the Mill on the Floss, where we are seeing that Tom Tulliver is going to attend an institution type of person, and he's going to get lectures and get trainings from that type of person who is really very highly qualified person, and morally and socially and financially of course is very strong person, and that is why we are expecting that Tom would be learning something very great when he is in the company of that teacher. But actually things take a very different turn, and the chapters which are 5 or 6 chapters in this part of the book, in this part of the novel in book 2, these show more of the exposure of Tom, Maggie and Philip with respect to their conflicts of life which they are having, and there was a very less type of education discussed, though some of the lessons have been told to be learned, but most of the time it is the conflict in the mind of every of these young people, Mr. Tom, Maggie and Mr. Philip, that comes forward because of their living together, because they're being exposed to the external realities of life. So far they have been just small kids, but now these people are grown up children, and therefore they are having a taste of the exposure of the world and are getting their conflicts not only presented but also in a way to, or in an effort to resolve them too. For example, if we proceed further into this book 2 and attempt to reach to chapter 2 of this book 2, we see the seeds of the conflict germinating in that chapter, because as soon as Tom has shifted to the new school, he goes back also to his village because of his Christmas holidays. And when he reaches there, in his village, St. Arts, he finds out that his father is in trouble because not only the water of the river is being exploited by some other people as well, not only by Mr. Tulliver but or by Mr. Wackham, but also by some person whose name is Mr. Pivart. And this Pivart, in order to irrigate his lands, he tries to divert the waters of the river Floss, and as a result, the mill on the Floss was unable to run in a very good way because the power of the water is shifted not solely towards this mill but also towards the other small areas which Mr. Pivot wanted to irrigate. So as a result, some rights of the water were being used by Mr. Pivot. Mr. Pivot forcefully he claims water, and as a result, there's a lot of trouble for Mr. Tulliver. So Tulliver's troubles have started already with Mr. Wackham, but now these troubles are now multiplying because of the efforts of Mr. Pivot. Mr. Pivot has been discussed at home, and his sister, Mrs. Moss, also says him a bad person, but most of the time it's not possible to remove the problem of a person by saying him bad. One needs to discuss the issue, one needs to try to solve that issue, but that issue was not being solved by Mr. Tulliver. He meets certain people but remains unable to solve this issue, so therefore his problem is increasing more and more. This time we see that not only the other people are present but also Mrs. Moss, who's the sister of Mr. Tulliver, that also has come, and she too tries to discuss certain things. In this regard, they declare Mr. Gore to be a good lawyer, a good person, possibly he may be helping Mr. Tulliver, but then all these things go to indicate that something bad is going to happen to the family of Mr. Tulliver, because mill on the Floss is the source of income for this family, and because of such type of happening which are taking place because of Mr. Pivot but also because of Mr. Wackham, that the source of income is going to be in trouble. So that is why Tom's education can also be in trouble. So the seeds are being sown in order to show, in order to bring those conflicts to the surface level, the conflicts of these three kids. And let us see what happens there. For example, in chapter 3, when we enter part 2 of this book, Mill on the Floss, we can see that the title has been given the school fellow. It means that Mr. Tom Tulliver will not be alone right now. He is there to face someone else, and this someone else is not other than Mr. Philip, who is the son of Mr. Wackham. Now, Mr. Tulliver has been explaining to his family that the troubles are mostly because of Mr. Wackham, and Wackham has been given a bad name in his family. So as a result, when Mr. Tom Tulliver comes to know that the new fellow which is being introduced to him by Mr. Sterling is Mr. Phillips, who is the son of Mr. Wackham, and as a result, Mr. Philip is not a person to be liked by him, and so when they meet together after the teacher Mr. Sterling is gone, both of these people are not at frank terms with each other, and they sit for a long time alone and not talking to each other, just having a casual glance at each other. Phillips continues to paint the painting and Tom continues to look at him, but ultimately they start talking with each other and a little bit of acceptance is there. So this is the situation in which Tom has to live with Mr. Philip, and this is the kind of situation in which you learn to live with the people whom you don't like. This word is like that, and as a result, George Eliot has presented a real word in which you need to accept your enemy as well, or the person whom you don't like. The same thing is happening with Mr. Tom and Philip both. But both of these people are connected together because of certain elements here. For example, they are connected because of the academy of Mr. Sterling. Mr. Sterling himself is a bond there, education is a bond there, but above all, the artistic qualities of Mr. Philip are the bonding force, and as a result, this is the art, this is the painting which Mr. Philip is doing, and Tom Tulliver feels interested in watching that, seeing that, and as a result, both of these people come together because of these situations. And in this way, a kind of connection is established, though it's an uneasy connection, and that connection is really something which may not be so good between these two people, but it can prove good as well when both of these people forget their differences, rather the differences of their fathers, and instead concentrate on what they are and who they are. So as an individual they will be able to come close, but as the person relevant to each families may not be able to come close because of the conflicts, the material conflicts or financial conflicts of their fathers. The chapter 4 of the same book, which has been titled as The Young Idea, goes to talk more about the things which are relevant to the youthful people who want to learn and who do not want to learn. Tom is the type of person who would like to learn certain games, especially those games through which he can establish his power or establish his skills. But on the other hand, Philip would be the person who would love to learn music, for example, who would love to go through painting, for example. In that way, the writer has presented to us two boys who are having entirely two different natures. For example, one is war type of person, soldier type of person. One is the real boy, and the other one is more interested in arts. He seems to be more mature, so he loves to sing, he loves to play at the piano, and he similarly loves to paint as well. He loves to study as well. So these are the differences between these two boys. In this way, two types of boys have also been highlighted, but the thing is to be seen how these two types of boys come together. In this chapter, we have another character who is Mr. Poulter. Now, Mr. Poulter is a person who has been in the army, and he knows well the use of guns, he knows well the use of swords, and that is why he attracts the attention of Tom, because Tom also wants to play with the sword. When the stories of war, of playing of the sword, are told by Mr. Poulter at that time, Tom becomes very much interested in that, and he loves to engage himself in this type of activity, and that is why he becomes a special lover of Mr. Poulter and wants him to play with the sword with him, and wants him to allow to touch his sword as well, and wants him to teach how to play with all that. So in this way, Tom really tries to enter into something difficult, and so he, because of this difficulty, will be able to earn more sympathy from Philip, and Philip will find a chance to come close to Mr. Tom in order to see what is happening. But the beginning of this matter really very bad, because in the very beginning, when Tom runs towards Philip, who is playing on the piano, and asks him, please come on, let us see the fencing type of match or the activity of the sword, playing of the sword by Mr. Poulter. At that time, he cries very hard and tries to attract the attention of Mr. Philip, who is playing on the piano. Mr. Philip gets angry, and he shouts back at him that Tom doesn't care about this thing, how much he was involved in music, how much he was enjoying, and he just wants to speak loud and catch his attention as well. No, this is the situation which begins with a type of little aggression or a conflicting situation, but actually that is the type of situation which allows them to talk to each other, or show what is inside their brains and inside their minds going on. They show both each other, accuse both each other, both try to tell the other person that they are not in that type of position which they are claiming, and they can do much better as compared to the other party. So in that way, the start takes in a very bad shape, but in fact this is the start which then brings them together. Tom therefore goes alone, and in one way or the other looks at the game and ultimately convinces Mr. Poulter to give him the sword, so that he can have a look at the sword, and actually has the intention so that he may be able to use the sword and show to Mr. Philip that how much he is powerful. And that way Tom engages in this soldier-like activity instead of having more and more studies. So that is the part 1 of second book in Middle Floss. We shall be talking in part 2 how the other chapters turn and bring more conflicts towards us. So if you have enjoyed this video, and if you have learned anything out of this video, please go to the subscribe button and hit it as well. And actually thanking you here, thank you very much for watching this video.